Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you are new, please do consider subscribing, and if you're listening to this via our new podcast, Lemmy's Bookstore, please do consider following us over there as well. Today we're going to be looking at a very fascinating book, and that is Hamilton Helmer's 7 Powers, the Foundations of Business Strategy. So Hamilton Helmer is an instructor at Stanford University's economics department, where he teaches business strategy. Business strategy basically means formulating a set of goals or initiatives for a business, and the purpose of this is to increase the value of your company or your business, right? So Hamilton Helmer speaks of value in terms of power, and he defines power as a set of conditions that lead to persistent differential gains, where differential gains is basically persistent profitability over a very long period of time. So there are 7 factors, or there are 7 powers without which a business is going to eventually collapse. I have created a mnemonic to help us remember these 7 powers. Of course I have. And so the mnemonic is, drum roll please, see now, because seeing back causes pain. And so the 7 powers that we're going to be speaking about are scale economies, networking economies, counter positioning, switching costs, branding, then we have cornered resource, and finally process power. So those are the seven powers that we're going to be speaking about today. For each of these powers, we shall be talking about a benefit that the business gains from this particular power, and we shall also speak about a barrier that prevents competitors from copying this power. So the first power is scale economies. There are so many benefits that a business gains from its large scale. The benefits of scale economies can be broken down into 4. The first is distribution network density. The second is area volume relationships. The third is learning economies. And the fourth is purchasing economy. Yes, so distribution network density. A company like Amazon is a very large company. It's actually one of the most valuable companies in the world right now. And so what that allows for Amazon to enjoy is a very wide network of its distribution stations. Amazon has warehouses that are almost everywhere, and because of that, it is able to enjoy benefits such as lower costs of transportation of goods to the customers, and also the time that it takes for a good that you order to reach you is greatly reduced. The second benefit of scale economies is area volume relationship. So what this means is, take for example, there are 2 companies, right? So we've got company A, and then we've also got company B. Now, if company A is a much larger company, so if both companies A and B are looking to rent a warehouse, then company A, that is the larger company, will probably be able to rent this warehouse at a much lower cost compared to company B, because company A is a very big company, which means that it's probably renting very many of these warehouses, and that can allow for it to negotiate a lower cost for these warehouses. Company A, being that it is a bigger company, probably has more products, right, than company B, the smaller company. So it can take advantage of this warehouse and reduce the cost per unit product of storing its products in these warehouses compared to company B that has fewer products. So the third is learning economies. There are businesses where if training employees in the long run leads to reduced costs of production or increased quality in the products being produced, then a company that has more employees would reduce their costs more and benefit more from the increase in quality of the products compared to a company that is smaller and that has fewer employees. And the fourth and final one is purchasing economies. I expect all of us to know these ones, because when a company is big, it's going to buy supplies in a larger scale, and so this allows for it to negotiate for better prices from its suppliers compared to a smaller company that is buying these products at a smaller quantity. The benefit of scale economies is lower costs of production. And then the barrier. What is the barrier that is stopping other companies from also expanding and having a very large operation and having a very large scale like this? The barrier for scale economies is the price, the cost required to reach that same scale of the bigger company. The second power that we're going to talk about today is networking economies. So the networking effect is a business that becomes more valuable to you the more customers that this business gets. For instance, WhatsApp, for instance, Facebook, for instance, Telegram, for instance, Instagram. All of these platforms become more valuable to us the more people that we know that are using these platforms as well. If all your family members, your friends, and your colleagues, everybody is on Instagram, then Instagram becomes a more reasonable platform to use. So the benefit of networking economies is that the company can be able to charge much higher prices for the extra added value that it's going to present to you, the customer. However, the barrier that stops other businesses from replicating this same power is the fact that the benefit to cost ratio that it would require for them to acquire these customers, to shift from the brands that they are already familiar with and that they like anyway, is the cost is very high. For instance, many customers would require you to actually pay them money before they can switch from their iPhones to an Android phone, and that is the barrier that stops other companies from replicating the same power. So the third power, and my personal favorite, is counter positioning. Counter positioning is where a business adopts a superior business model that the incumbent cannot replicate because it would jeopardize its existing business, right? For example, in 2007, when Apple came out with the iPhone, companies like Nokia, Motorola, were all witnessing this happening. I mean, they should have known somehow that this was going to be the future of phones, isn't it? But still, despite the fact that they knew that there was little that they could do in response to the iPhone, by the time these companies started coming out with smartphones that could come close to what the iPhone was doing, the iPhone was already very far ahead. But you would ask yourself, how is it that these companies that were very valuable could see Apple coming but had nothing that they could do about it? And the reason is because, I think we're going to get into the barrier right now, is because of collateral damage. Hamilton Helmer divides collateral damage into three things. The first is milking. When the iPhone was released, when the smartphone was first released, there was still a huge market world over for the phones that Nokia was making, those buttony phones. And so because of that, if they had shifted directly to start making smartphones and to perfect themselves at the smartphone business, then they would have had to sacrifice the huge revenues that they were already getting from the phones that they were making. The second is history's slave. Now, when we talk about history's slave, we're talking about, first of all, some of these companies look at these new and emerging business models and think that they are not yet proven. It would be a huge risk for them to convert their entire operation or their entire focus into this new business model. The other thing is cognitive bias. You realize if a company has been manufacturing something and is very perfect at it, for example, Kodak and the films that it was producing before the era of digital cameras, you will realize that for them to shift their entire attention to this new business model becomes very difficult. They are still biased towards the business model that they had been adopting for generations and generations, and so it becomes difficult, and the company develops this cognitive bias against this new business model. The third is job security. If Kodak had decided to adopt digital cameras, it was going to leave so many of their employees jobless because their employees were perfect at making film or cameras that used film, but not really perfect at making digital cameras. And so for these three reasons, companies can see competitors rising with better and superior business models that they're adopting, but still do nothing about it and have no response at all. So the benefit of counter positioning is that the business is able to charge higher prices. For instance, if you're Apple and you're coming out with an iPhone, a smartphone that has never been seen before, then you have the incentive to charge a higher price for this superior product, or else the company can drastically lower their costs of production. So the fourth power is switching costs. Now, switching costs, this is the loss incurred by a customer when they have to change from one supplier to another. Apple, right? When you have an iMac and you're using Final Cut Pro as your default editing software, if you by any chance want to shift maybe to Adobe, it becomes very difficult because there are certain losses that this customer that you're going to incur. They can be categorized into three. The first is financial. For you to switch to Adobe, you would probably have to buy the Adobe software, which is a financial cost. That's the first one. The second one is the procedural cost. So the procedural cost is that you have become accustomed to Final Cut Pro, and when you have to change from Final Cut Pro to Adobe, you will have to relearn the software. The third is relational. You are now used to your Apple product, you're used to the Apple team or whatever, and so now shifting all the way to Adobe, like a Windows dominant product, becomes very unattractive for you. What is the benefit of switching costs? The benefit is that the supplier has incentive to charge much higher prices because the customer has no choice but to use their product, right? If Apple increased the price of the iMac, or if it increased the subscription for Final Cut Pro, it's more likely that a lot of people would still continue to pay despite the fact that the higher price is an inconvenience. The barrier is that there are two reasons that can make a customer switch from this supplier that they have become familiar to you. And those reasons are: one, you have to give them a very huge incentive. Some customers would actually require you to pay them money for them to switch to your product. And the second is, if your product has superior technology and makes a huge difference for this customer, huge enough that would let them endure the pain of paying, of relearning the software, and of switching the relationships. The caveat here is that switching costs only works once the customer is already hooked into your ecosystem. Before, when the customer still has no supplier chosen, then at that point in time, it is up to you to try to win over this customer. So the fifth power that we're going to talk about is branding. A brand that has been able to establish a reputation among customers for quality, and that is able to elicit a must-have feeling from a customer, can benefit from the power of branding. So with branding, there are certain things that we have to look at as caveats. The first is brand dilution. You look at the time when the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 started exploding, that is brand dilution. The time when the iPhone 6 Plus started bending, that is brand dilution. Brand dilution tarnishes the reputation of a brand amongst customers. The second is counterfeits. There are tons of counterfeits that are manufactured every day for some of these luxury brands. For example, Louis Vuitton. For every bag that Louis Vuitton produces, there is an exact copy that China is producing at a very, very low price. The third is changing customer preferences. Sometimes customers prefer a particular product, but these preferences can change. The fourth would be geographical barriers. People in India love the OnePlus, but that is not necessarily the same for people in Africa. There are very many people that do not know about the brand OnePlus. So what does cornered resource mean? This is when a business is able to secure preferential access to a resource that would independently increase the value of this business or this company. For example, if you have a cement factory and you maybe you have access to a source of limestone, or you own like a limestone plant, then you have cornered the resource of limestone. So the benefit obviously is of profit, or in terms of charging lower prices and making the product overall more attractive to customers. And so what is the barrier? The barrier for cornered resources usually is fiat, or it's government regulations, laws. When Pfizer discovered the vaccine for COVID-19, it secured a patent that allowed it to be the sole manufacturer of that vaccine. So that barrier of the patent makes it impossible for other pharmaceutical companies to just replicate the exact same vaccine that Pfizer invested money in discovering. The seventh and last power is process power. First of all, congratulations for making it this far. If you have, I know a ton of people have not. But process power. In 1950, Eiji Toyoda, then the managing director of Toyota Motor Companies, visited the Ford River Rouge plant for 3 months, touring their factories, touring their plants, trying to craft a system, a process that Toyota was going to adopt in its own manufacturing plants. And so after 3 months, he developed what we call the Toyota production system. This system turned out phenomenal. It was incredible. Toyota established a reputation for manufacturing durable cars, but very affordable cars at the same time. On the surface, there are 4 reasons why people thought that Toyota cars had become so superior, or why the Toyota production system was so good. So on the surface, people thought it was because of on-time production. That means that they were always trying to maintain their production schedules, and they never really overlapped their production schedule. The second is Kaizen. Kaizen means continuous improvements. It means continuing to make improvements to the system. The third is Kanban, which is basically inventory control. And the fourth is unknown codes. Unknown codes were devices that allowed a worker to stop the entire production line if they identified a certain problem. So they would stop the production line until the problem was fixed, and then the production line would then continue. So on the surface, people thought it was because of these 4 things. Now, General Motors company decided to go to Toyota's factory. I mean, Toyota was so lenient and so kind that they allowed General Motors to tour their factories, to interview their workers, to talk to the workers, to try to replicate every single thing that Toyota was already doing, and yet they were a competitor. So when they tried to replicate this Toyota production system for General Motors, it was hugely unsuccessful. The Toyota production system was much more complex than General Motors could understand. And so what is the benefit of process power? The benefit of process power is there are lower costs of production, and the second is you produce superior products. For example, how durable the Toyota cars are and how affordable they are for customers because of the lower costs of production that Toyota is able to achieve due to its superior production system. And what is the barrier that stops other companies like General Motors from copying the Toyota production system? The barrier is hysteresis. It's time. Time is the barrier. It takes a long time. It took over 15 years for Toyota to develop this system and perfect it, and it took even more years for Toyota to move this system to its suppliers as well. Operational excellence is very key for all the 7 powers. So yeah, that sums up power statics for us. If you have reached this point in the video, massive round of applause for you. Congratulations. I know it has been a very strenuous ride. Actually, if you have reached this point in the video, please leave a comment down, an emoji, just any emoji, a laughing emoji, thumbs up emoji. Power dynamics, how can we integrate these 7 powers into our businesses? So our main target is supposed to be to create compelling value for customers, and there are three ways that we can create compelling value in our business. Compelling value is basically for us to elicit this response from customers, where it's like, I really have to have, I gotta have response from from customers, right? And so that is the main target. So there are 3 ways of getting compelling value. There is customer-led compelling value. So what does this mean? There is a challenge that you can see customers are facing, but no one has been able to solve this problem or this challenge. If you're able to invent and solve that problem, then you create compelling value. The second is capabilities-led compelling value. When the company leverages its abilities to create a product that customers can find irresistible. For example, when Adobe leveraged its abilities in graphics with its strength in software and developed all these multiple incredible Adobe softwares that we all use today. And so the third is competitor-led compelling value. When a competitor to your business has created this incredible product, and so you take that product and you try to make this product even much more better. The problem with competitor-led compelling value is that there are 2 uncertainties. Number 1, is the difference that you're creating your product with, is the difference between your product and the product of the competitor huge enough? Is your product much better enough that it's going to entice customers to switch over to your product? That's the first uncertainty. The second uncertainty is your competition going to be slow in its response? Without invention, you can never establish power. So there are three phases when it comes to power progression. The first is the origination phase. In the origination phase, there is no single company that has established compelling value. Within this phase, there are two powers that can be established. The first is counterpositioning, and the second is cornered resource. And along with their barriers, fiat and collateral damage. Those are the two barriers that you can establish within the origination phase. The next phase is the takeoff phase. When the industry is picking up steam, the number of sales of these products or services is increasing exponentially. So during this phase, there are three powers that you can establish. So the three powers that you can establish within the takeoff phase are switching costs, scale economies, and networking economies. Then the last phase of industry progression is the stability phase, when the growth in the industry has taken now sort of like a plateau. And so during this phase, these two powers that can be established are branding and process power. So in summary, those are the windows within which you can establish these different kinds of powers within the industry that you're in. So yeah, that is it. After a very long time, I know you have devoted a lot of time and effort into the video. Thank you so much. Please do consider liking the video, and yeah, man, see you next time. All the best in whatever business that you're trying to get into, and I hope that it turns out to be a very fantastic experience and that it succeeds very widely. Yeah, man.